I am malicious compliance Matt, okay? And I'll make sure they understand it is not worth their time.
So
but that's just me.
Petty war with them.
Oh, exactly.
This was brought up in the academy. I think the example that Alice used was Mike S'more versus LSPD. Like, while we wouldn't reference that now, we would still just like, act on it or mention that it's something that we could do lawfully.
Oh, 100%. 100%. When we're okay, so that one was interesting. If I recall correctly, that one was specific to felony stops at the time, if I recall correctly. In the search of the trunk, originally what was happening is during a felony stop at the time, it's a high risk stop now. Actually, I'll just refer to it as a high risk stop. During a high risk stop, we would search the interior of the vehicle, make sure that there was nobody in it or anything, and then we would pop the trunk, and officers would also look in the trunk, for specifics. If there were boxes or anything, it would all be documented. That was procedure at the time. However, case law deemed that to not be the case, or shouldn't have been the case, and we were only to pop the trunk to check for people and people only. So we weren't specifically looking in the trunk. We were popping the trunk just to visually see if any person was in there, but that was it. We would do the same thing now because in a high-risk stop, let's say, somebody called out a vehicle description and coincidentally the person matched, but it wasn't actually the person. Or let's say a vehicle was improperly flagged, reported stolen by its owner, and then they 311 indicating, I've received my car back, don't worry, you can unflag my plate. But then somebody doesn't get to that and the plate doesn't get flagged. We pull it over on a high-risk stop. We are now technically illegally searching their vehicle by specifically looking for stuff in the trunk outside of a person.
Masturbating with toothpaste and fucking drinking vinegar.
The application of that still very much so exists. That's what he called and said to me. Okay, and I don't want to brag, but there used to be case law referencing, the state and Meg Kyra crews, specifically in a case that I worked. And I can be pedantic. You want a petty war, you done got it with me. So for context, this person asked if an attorney was available, to which I pulled out my phone, I went through the DOJ app, and I was like, there is, I don't remember if there was. I answered. But their legal argument was they asked for an attorney by asking if one was available. Now, if you ask me if something is available, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are asking for it, right? Again, being very pedantic. At the time, all you did was ask if something was available, to which I answered yes. And if you wanted one, you should have asked for one. But the conclusion from the Department of Justice at the time was asking if one is available is the same as asking for an attorney. Now, again, same thing. All right. Well, we are back. This has now happened, 3 times? And I will be on the phone with Comcast soon. What the fuck? Let me check the good old router. I don't know my password for anything nowadays. I hate it. I both love it and hate it. Network, we're let's see, rejoining in a moment. NoPixel.net. Connect. Okay. Where did I see the info last time? Oh, right here. What time is it? It's not even showing up yet. Fuck. Yeah. Now it does. Sick. It has happened almost every day. 10, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 19, 20, 21, and 23. Okay, bud. Not wrong, Orange. Not wrong. I will be speaking with them. Spawn. Last location. Oh, 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 ah, ah. All right. Y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Whew.
Are you starting to feel all
Nope.
the damage from the science experiment?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh no, we already forgot about the DNA experiment.
Uh-oh. Concussion.
All right. Well, sorry. Pedantic. That's me. But again, although, like I said, the application of those prior ones aren't technically written, it's probably best that we, were to continue as if they still were. Is the TLDR until some officer inevitably violates somebody's rights, and then case law is rewritten, and it be what it be. Now that being said, give me a moment. Let me just go ahead and this here. There we go. Okay. Are both of y'all familiar with Miranda rights?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Okay. Can both of y'all read them off to me? Larry, you first.
You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one will be appointed to you by the state if available. Do you understand these rights as I have read them to you?
Okay.
You have the right to remain
Verlaine?
silent. Anything you say or do may be used against you as evidence in the court of law. Your right to have an attorney present with you during any and all questioning. If you can't afford an attorney, we'll get you one at free of charge if one is available. And then once
Perfect.
when they confirm yes, I ask them, knowing your Miranda rights, do you wish to talk to me? Did I make it clear if you decide to answer any of my questions, you have the right to stop talking to me at any time?
Okay.
Yeah, Rhodes didn't answer my question, so I couldn't ask him if he still wanted to talk to me. But I just took it as a no.
All right, there we are. Let me just sit back down.
And that is the one case law that I am most familiar with, as it protects their constitutional right to counsel, and I believe that is under the Fifth Amendment. And I'm pro Fifth Amendment.
I think the Fifth Amendment is more like plead the fifth for you don't have to speak. I don't know if it's a right to counsel though.
I believe it falls under it. Like something to do with counsel being present. But I guess
Well, the
I
fifth
could be
is
wrong.
specific to being able to remain silent and protect you from self-incrimination. I'm inclined to say the 6th is the right to counsel, if I recall correctly. I'm be real, I'm not a big historian. I actually despise history, and it's been a while since I've had to revisit amendments.
Yeah, it could be wrong. It could be.
I'm not sure if there is an amendment for a right to counsel.
It would fall
I
under.
assume there is, but
You know what? Guess. Hold up. Actually,
I don't know. I don't know the amendments like that.
hold on. Yeah, that's neither here nor there.
Yep.
Back to the SOPs. Because I want to ensure we are all on the same page referencing all of these, okay?
Absolutely.
What should I hit y'all with next? Okay, what's the sort of standard format when it comes to radio communications? I repeated this many times in Academy.
Hey, you, it's me.
Perfect.
Yep.
Follow-up question. And we'll go ahead and Larry, I'm gonna have you. I'm gonna skip around here just to try to make sure it's not all one thing sort of back to back. And we've already done this with Sterling. Larry, you familiar with the use of force?
Yes, sir.
Hit me with them.
Presence, verbalization, open hand control, less lethal, lethal.
Perfect. You don't necessarily have to. I'm not going to ask for presence. That one's relatively self-explanatory. Give me just a very basic, generalized explanation of each.
So vocalization is just being able to use your voice to command crowds or command people or direct people. Open hand is going to be tackling. Less lethal is going to be taser or baton if under certain circumstances, and lethal is firearm.
Like I said, if you ask me, that should just be more lethal. I don't know how many people I've killed with my gun.
Yeah. That's why one of the questions I'd asked in Academy was, do we shoot to kill or shoot to disable? Because if you're shooting to kill, that's more lethal.
Most definitely. Oftentimes, like I said before, referencing, when we're shooting at vehicles, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be shoot to kill the driver. But if the vehicle is the weapon and they step out and aren't presenting any other threat, they ain't got a knife in hand, a gun or anything, you should not be shooting them.
Yep.
Okay. What should I ask next? What does code 1 mean?
Is that for me?
Either of you.
Just a routine call. Normal call, no lights, no sirens.
Perfect. Sterling, code 2.
Lights and sirens. Just
Sirens at
lights.
intersection.
Takedowns at horns, but non-emergency response is kind of what I see it as. Non-life-threatening incident. Something where you shouldn't be endangering other people's lives to respond to said call. For example, 77s at a normal traffic stop would be a code 2 response. Certainly wouldn't want to be speeding, blowing through every intersection, lights and sirens to get to that and put other people's lives in jeopardy, or may not be able to respond because I end up in an accident, something along the lines of that.
Got it. All right. Larry, code 3.
That's an emergency, lights and sirens on, full send.
Got it. And what are you allowed to do to prevent from, alerting suspects that we're in the area.
Turn your sirens off when you arrive.
Perfect.
Yeah, if you're investigating a call, you can safely, quote unquote, I guess, violate a traffic law as long as you're on a call responding and it's deemed necessary.
Makes sense. Within our SOPs, when you are 10-6, it indicates a few examples of things that you should be going 10-6 for as opposed to 10-7. Do either of y'all know what those things are?
For repairs?
No, that would be like if you're having a meeting, or I guess it depends on how important the meeting is.
Well, I guess the meeting, I think, is listed under 10-7 because you could have your radio off for 10-7, but 10-6 you
Right.
gotta have your
So
radio
I'll
on.
give y'all a
That's when
hint
it's a
here.
friendly meeting.
It applies to both, one of which is important, one of which isn't necessarily as important. So y'all are on the right track, because while there is a difference between 10-6 and 10-7, specifically, something as basic as like something that isn't necessarily going to take so long, whether that be getting food, taking a civilian report, stuff like that. Essentially, the entire thing is you can absolutely, without question, respond to an emergency in the event where something happens. But you know what you can't do? If you're 10-6, you can't be in the bathroom taking a shit. You can't respond immediately. That's the reality. Okay? If you're in an interrogation speaking with somebody, you're not 10-6, you're 10-7, because you're not going to suddenly break off a full-blown investigation, while you're interrogating somebody to deal with an emergency. You absolutely can't. Remember what I said. You want to, although especially in shift 3 when we're typically very short-staffed, you want to ensure that you are trying your best to complete one thing before jumping over to the next. If a 78 call comes out and you're dealing with somebody who, it was a traffic violation, suspended license, kind of like we had before, if that was a 78 call, they're free to go. It is what it is. But if that original call led to, I don't know, let's say a body in the trunk of that car, or whatever the situation is, and we bring them over to Mission Row, we're asking them questions regarding a murder. I'm sorry that there's a 78, but we can't exactly let this one go. We're busy. We are dedicating to this and we're seeing it through. Now in a situation like us being tripled up, obviously in the capacity of me being an FTO, but let's say for whatever reason we had a lot of units, a lot of which were busy, and I'm just an officer, y'all are officers. If y'all can coordinate and ensure that the interrogation can still happen, I may be able to break off. If y'all are primary on the scene and y'all have all the information and can do everything. But outside of that, you are to sort of see that situation through, but you're 10-7 as a result of that interrogation. Or again, bathroom break. Anything like that. Hell, even cataloging evidence.
Yeah, so basically 10-6, I was saying, if you're just like talking to civilians and it's something that doesn't really...
Community policing, if you will.
Yeah.
Right? If you're down on Grove Street talking to a bunch of people, you can be... I mean, you don't necessarily have to call it that you're 10-6, right? It's not necessarily like super important, but at the same time, there is very much so a difference between that and having the immediate ability to break off versus, being on the shitter when a 78 goes out. Because I'm sorry, but
I honestly feel
you
like
need time.
Nobody calls 10-6.
Nobody does, truthfully. That is just because more often than not, most people just go 10-7.
Yep.
Reality is, I'm gonna be real. Getting food, depending on circumstances, a 10-7. If I went to Senior Buns before, I was there for a fucking hour before I could leave. There's no leaving Senior Buns. I don't even go to Senior Buns anymore. I'd rather eat from the fucking vending machines.
I'm telling you, I went there
Roller dogs.
like Monday or Tuesday, and one of the people I knew was there, and they were like, "How's the cop stuff going?" Immediately, I was like, "All right, I can't work here anymore. I gotta go." Everybody just starts coming out. Can you help me with this? Can you help me with that?
Yeah,
Have you heard
happens all
about
the
this?"
time.
I'm
Every
like, "Man,
single
I'm not
time.
even on duty. Leave me alone.
Yeah, for me, like
okay.
the way I've always just personally differentiated, because when I was training for dispatch, I got confused on this quite often. It's you're busy, but you're available for emergency calls if 10-6, and if you're 10-7, you're busy and unavailable to respond to emergencies, and that would be the only time that you could go off radio is when you're 10-7. Is that still allowed? Like if you're 10-7 doing like an interrogation, can you turn off the radio?
It is not ideal to turn off your radio. Lowering the volume, that way in the event where something crazy happens, be what it be. But yes, you can in fact turn your radio off if you're 10-7, because at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to respond to that emergency, right? You're in a situation that you're sort of locked in on. That makes sense?
Even with us right here, I marked us 10-7, but I still have my radio on just like the lowest setting.
Yeah.
Just
Which
in case
no issue. I mean, I'm gonna be real. We're not going back out there.
Right.
I have to end my shift here shortly, which is primarily why I wanted to focus on SOPs amongst the two of you, so that we can ensure that y'all are, sort of checked off as good with SOPs, because it was a point of not contention but feedback for the both of you.
Okay.
The other thing, which is probably, unfortunately, we don't get pursuits all that often, but pursuits was also something brought up, and I'm going to be real, probably radio comms in the grand scheme of things in a pursuit, but when we don't get pursuits all that often, that's going to be a little more difficult to run by. Again, radio comms for me is always the biggest thing for most cadets. Ultimately, y'all are relatively new to the department, and most people, similar to meeting a group of mutual friends, right? Like, your one friend, you're going to probably sit next to them, and be a little uncomfortable at first until you get to know everybody. But once you get to know everybody, you're fully, confident and have no issues with communicating with everybody.
Yep.
The same thing exists with radio. You hear people on radio, a lot of these people have been doing this for years on end. A lot of them know each other. You kind of feel like the odd one out, but once you show up every day, once you start, having conversations with everybody, it just becomes, the normal day to day. You don't have to worry about listening to, somebody on radio you've never spoken to before. And then you feel fully comfortable being on radio. And for me, radio comms improve most when you're solo.
Oh yeah, I could see that. I think the big thing for me was originally, like you said, just kind of nervous around everybody, want to make sure everything was like perfect, and I was just kind of overdoing it. And then the 10 codes came to me, and then also now the pursuit comms with like left, eastbound Vespucci, right, northbound, and stuff like that.
Yep. I mean, those are the three.
Big time with it.
Those are the three that are like super important.
Yeah.
Right, northbound power, left, westbound Haywick, right, northbound Alta, left, westbound fucking Spanish. Like, for me, the street name isn't even necessary. If I know where you originally were and I hear right, northbound power, based on timing, I know immediately the two things that you should know off the bat is the turn and cardinal direction. You don't need to be, directly near them to know those two things. You can know those right off the bat.
Holy fuck.
Oh, Jesus. That may have been a helicopter. Who knows? So for me, right, an experienced officer, I can tell and gauge where people are just based upon where they were previously called out, a turn and cardinal direction. But again, turn, cardinal direction, street name, turn, cardinal direction, street name. If you want to add something after, maybe a landmark, that's perfectly fine.
Yep.
Right, eastbound Haywick, passing the pink cage. Right, southbound Meteor. And if they continue southbound, where Meteor merges Elgin is right at the cross of occupation. You know, you can then indicate merging southbound Elgin, passing Upper Pillbox. You can, you know, while there is a 10 code for a lot of things, again, radio comms aren't just 10 codes. Plain speak is okay in certain circumstances. There is no 10 code for a landmark. You have to be able to communicate that. There is no 10 code for merging off-road. You have to be able to communicate that. And a lot of people have a massive issue with off-road comms. The reality here is, if you need to communicate, right southbound merging off-road from San Andreas Ave, or like if you're heading northbound on the freeway, kind of across from the water treatment plant, there's like a break. It's not directly across, it's a little north. There's a break off-road it's along the southern lanes, but a lot of times when people are heading northbound, they'll cross the opposing lanes to merge off-road there. Again, there's no 10 code for that, right? So you could just indicate left merging northwest off-road parallel to LS freeway. The moment you say off-road, I'm immediately going to know where you are based upon you saying that, for the most part at least. You know, taking the off-road path that merges northbound towards Harmony, Route 68.
Yeah, I know exactly what you were talking about when you said it.
Yeah, but again, there's no 10 code. There's no one clean, easy way to communicate every off-road path. They're not all straight. You know, they curve in a million different directions. Same thing for Great Ocean Highway. If you're heading, like if you are directly behind a vehicle, Great Ocean Highway is anything but straight, with the exception of very few parts. But if you take a look at Great Ocean, the general direction is north to south. Again, yes, there are bends that are technically west and east, but if you tell me westbound Great Ocean Highway, the only place that is acceptable is up in Paleto, where it is true east to west. If you say westbound or eastbound anywhere along where it's primarily going north to south as the primary direction, I'm now lost as somebody who has a generally solid understanding of locations and just like general map knowledge.
Big from when we did the pursuits in Grapeseed during Academy, about what you said about, you know, the street generally goes north to south or east to west.
Yep.
And it was, I know David and I were having a tough time with it, but then it like finally stuck with me. Like I looked at all the streets, I was like, okay, this one starts north and south, so it's north and south, even though it's like they were all on 45s, you know, they were all northwest or northeast.
Yep, exactly. So are y'all able to both look at your GPS at the moment?
Yep.
Okay, so I want you to go to the gas station at the start of Great Ocean and Del Perro Freeway.
Okay.
It should be, well, for me, it's gas station 2 out of 7. Let me know when y'all are both there.
Right off West Eclipse?
Yep, off of West Eclipse, far west side.
Yeah.
All right, now, sort of, casually go up Great Ocean, okay? At the very beginning, where it says Great Ocean Highway, technically, yes, that is far more west than it is north, okay? But again, if you call westbound there, nobody's going to know. Right. Genuinely, nobody is going to know. That is like a west-northwest at the very beginning. When you pass Pacific Bluffs, which is that first structure along Great Ocean, I guess technically second maybe, but like the bigger structure, past the Great Ocean Highway, like text on the actual road, that is almost like a straight like westbound turn. But again, it is temporary and continues north. If you call north and south, I promise you it'll be far better than calling any northwest or west, east. None of that is going to be of help. Just as it merges, if you take a look at Route 68 in Great Ocean, so like south of Fort Zancudo, south of that bridge over the swamp, that is like a very eastbound bend. But if you call eastbound there, I'm already assuming at this point that y'all are on 68, because in the mind of any experienced officer, Great Ocean runs north to south until you hit Paleto. And once you hit Paleto, strangely enough, like as you're in Paleto, it is still very much so like northeast, but it then cuts straight east and then cuts south on Sonora Freeway. And then Sonora Freeway, same thing. Sonora Freeway is very north and south. That is the primary direction of travel. You want to ensure that you are not calling east to west, because you will lose anybody who has general map experience calling east to west on any of the freeways up north.
Yep. Yeah, that stuck with me big time because we went to Grapeseed.
Yep.
So I was kind of glad about the Grapeseed thing. At first, I was like, this is terrible. It's so fucking hard. But then afterwards, I was like, I realized why you did it.
Same thing with, I mean, you look at any of the roads, right? It is very much so a grid.
Yep.
Popular Street, you can see runs northeast to southwest. Not Popular, apologies, Power. Same thing applies to Alta. Every major road is not directly north and south. But if you start calling, northeast, southwest, north and south, just cut it there, because you can then see the direct intersections between Occupation, San Andreas, Vespucci, all of those streets, right? Innocence, Adam's Apple. And those are clearly east-west.
Yep.
There are some very few exceptions. Very few exceptions. That being like Dutch London by the Barrio. Dutch London has a bunch of different portions. There's like south of Calais. That runs north and south. It then merges. Let's see. It then merges eastbound. It merges eastbound, sort of around the Maze Bank Arena, a little west of it. Merges east, goes all the way to the Barrio. It then cuts north a little bit before then transition to El Rancho Boulevard, where El Rancho cuts east.
Place and Chupacabra.
Yep. So there are a lot of very strange, like, one-off things, but for like 90% of scenarios, a street truly is north, south, east, west.
Yep.
Well, anyways, it's a big spiel for me, because I promise you, when we hear someone on radio call westbound Great Ocean Highway, if it is not in Paleto, and when I say Paleto, I mean like east of Paleto, we're lost. And by we're lost, we know we're dealing with somebody with not much experience, because giving us that information is practically useless. If you suddenly get on a bend southbound on Great Ocean and you call west, I don't know where you are. That could be anywhere along Great Ocean. But when you are on Great Ocean, landmarks perfectly fine. Southbound, southbound approaching the S bend, continuing south passing Hookies, right? Approaching the Fort Zancudo Tunnel, entering it, exiting Fort Zancudo Tunnel, approaching the Route 68 turnoff, passing the 68 turnoff, still southbound Great Ocean, right? Like, those aren't necessarily left, westbound, whatever, because you're still continuing generally south. Again, a lot of people have this general, like, no plain speak on radio. No, it's absolutely required in a lot of cases.
Right.
Any questions regarding radio related stuff? I'm an open book. I'm never going to judge somebody for asking a question. Doesn't matter how stupid. I know this sounds very cliche. Like, there's no stupid question. Remember, don't get me wrong. Some people are just stupid. Okay? But there are no stupid questions. If you feel you want to ask something, don't hesitate. Please ask.
Hey, firm, no questions so far?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think most of the 10 code part is stuck with me. Same with the radio etiquette.
That's good. It is very, very good. But there is also overdoing it. I love a lot of officers, but you don't need to call out every damn cross on the actual radio. If you're hauling ass northbound on Power, I don't need to hear crossing Haywick, crossing Spanish, crossing Vinewood Boulevard, crossing Clinton. Some people are okay with that. For me personally, I think it's excessive. And if somebody is looking to sort of butt in without breaking comms, there's no empty space there to do so. Like, if I obtain information that there's a blue two-door Blista that is following the pursuit, I now can't communicate that until a person is on a straight with no intersection for a while. All right. Well,
So I feel like if I'm on a straight with no, even with intersections, but if they just say they stay northbound on Power, I'll just be, traffic update or weather update. Like, just a quick, continuing northbound Power.
Well, it depends, because so for me, landmarks are like the in between for me, right? If we're northbound on Alta all the way down off of Adams Apple, continuing northbound, let's say it originally started off of, again, Adams Apple, or continuing north on Alta. I would probably call, passing the old Alta apartments.
Yep.
Or even the train station, it can be a call out as something, more recent. Continue northbound passing group 6 and then stay silent for a bit. If they continue northbound crossing Spanish, but I'm not calling crossing Vespucci, crossing San Andreas Ave, crossing Haywick, crossing Spanish, crossing Vanda Boulevard. That's excessive. Where again, Alta Apartments or the Alta train station, passing the group 6 HQ entrance, I would probably just say passing group 6. Maybe even passing the old courthouse, approaching the Vinewood city vault, that kind of stuff, but not every single cross. It's just not necessary.
Yep, I understand what you're saying.
Like a good 3 to 5 seconds.
Yeah, you there's definitely some downtime to be had. You should not feel it necessary to take up every ounce of radio, talk and time to. You don't need to constantly be talking, is the TLDR. You should be talking frequently, but you should not feel obligated to be saying everything all at once, just nonstop. Which brings me to my next point of, in radio comms, you give the information as you have it. I said this in Academy. When you are doing radio comms and you don't have the street name, we've already discussed this, left, westbound, because you should have that information available. And then if you need a delay, you don't have to necessarily, unclick your radio. But as soon as you have that street name, call it out. Left, westbound, Haywick. Right, northbound, Los Lagunas Boulevard.
McMahon helped me at that one big time. So if it takes a second because it's like a weird road, just stand by, and then as soon as you have it, just send it out again.
Exactly. 100%.
Same with if they're taking a lot of quick turns, just like don't sit there and say, left, westbound, and try to
give us the update. Yep. Give us the most recent.
Right. Yep. Just cut off the old information and then right, northbound, left, eastbound,
But there's a difference between right, northbound, left, westbound, but don't say, disregard. Like, if you say disregard, that tells me to ignore what you previously said. So if it's right, northbound, and they make an immediate left, don't disregard left, westbound. It's right, northbound, left, westbound, Spanish. Right, northbound, whatever, left, westbound, whatever. But a lot of people have made the mistake of calling out disregard because of a back-to-back and they didn't have that updated street name. Just continue on, right? Northbound, left, westbound, Spanish.
Unless they try to, juke you, and you're, calling the right early, but then they turn back straight.
Exactly. Now, appropriate and proper radio comms would be wait for them to take the turn, because in 99% of cases, if they're hugging the left side of the road, they're positioning for a right-hand turn. Yep. And we've seen people take these, years on end, the same routes over and over and over again. Most times we can call it, but the appropriate thing would be to wait for them to make that turn, or they could make the turn and then very, subtly at the end, sort of bow out of that turn and continue in a direction that they were previously traveling as like a last second, juke. Yep. Happens all the time.
I've noticed almost every pursuit, if we get by the red garage, everyone is just on edge. Someone go to the red garage. Watch a red garage.
Yeah, 100%. If you're on Upper La Puerta Freeway, you have to worry about 3 things: white garage, red garage, and the Del Perro swap.
Yep.
Technically 4 things, because if they continue north past the Del Perro swap, there's that off-road area that historically our police vehicles always struggle to get onto. But the other day, there was a swap to... There's a swap to a vehicle that was there after, I think, a laundromat?
Yep, I was a part of that.
Okay, so...
That was the one up Alta, though, wasn't it? Off the highway on Alta Street?
No. It was very much so...
There was multiple swaps.
Okay.
It might be different.
So... I want you all to look at your GPS and look at senior buns.
Yep.
Sterling, let me know when you see it.
Wait, was it the gentleman where he stopped on the off ramp or the on ramp to Del
Got it.
Perro from La Puerta and then started running southbound?
No. So to the left, you'll see Palomino Ave, right?
Yep.
Okay, so like on Palomino Ave, do you see the far northern freeway? It's indicated by yellow, right? That pastel
Yes.
yellow. Okay, so the far northern side going east. I wish I could mark this for you.
Talking about the old Sultan squeeze area?
Yeah, pretty much. Like you pass a little tree off road.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so a very effective swap for them is not even like leading us there in a vehicle, doing a swap there. Because the only way we can really get back onto that freeway is to continue all the way west onto, there's no eastbound access essentially to Del Perro Freeway. So if they have a vehicle just waiting there, waiting on the other side of that tree off-road, we have very little means of countering that because we're on a westbound turn. And if we went east, all we would do is cut south on La Puerta, have to go all the way around towards the Red Garage, go through the eastbound opening, and then cut all the way east to Del Perro to get back onto the freeway in that direction.
Yep.
It is very difficult to deal with stuff like that, which is why having somebody on Del Perro is very ideal, because Del Perro gives you immediate access to the upper swap, not upper swap, but like from La Puerta down to Del Perro in the grassy area. It gives you access to anybody in that area where the tree can be utilized, or there just being an interference car there or pickup car. And at the end of the day, somebody efficient could very quickly get to both Red and White Garage. White Garage through Ginger Street and Red also through Ginger and circling around. Yeah, you'll see that these things happen every fucking day, nonstop. Ain't never stopped, ain't gonna stop.
Spots.
All right. Run me through. Am I gonna have to do this? Sterling, run me through a high risk stop.
Request an additional. So if initially when they pass you, if it comes up, obviously we run the plate before we pull them over, initiate it, lights and sirens for this reason. That comes up 1060. I would request if it was necessary where I felt like there was extenuating circumstances, and it wasn't able to be resolved in a normal 38, I would request 77s, relaying the information to the units who are responding. For example, 862 attempted to stop a vehicle 1060 southbound Palomino Avenue, requesting 77s. Give periodic updates, tail end the vehicle code 1 until additionals attached. And then as soon as additionals were attached, make sure that it was communicated it's a high risk stop via the radio. That way they're all on the same page. As soon as lights and sirens are initiated, everyone would get into their position respectively facing the vehicle. The primary unit would step out, guns drawn, taking commands of the situation. For example, driver, engine off, windows down, drop the keys out with your left hand, have them step out, face away from us, communicating, making sure that they don't look towards us as they step out. Some people say look through your eyes. I'm gonna be honest, I don't say that. I just say make sure you don't look towards us.
It's probably best, just a heads up, that you do tell them to look through their eyes, because it might be a little difficult to not look towards us while walking towards any other way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More context. I definitely do need to do that because I'm under the assumption that people know how to not face police officers as they're walking backwards.
I think you have to look through your eyes to do it.
Yeah, I've just always struggled to for me, it's always sounded weird, but I guess
you're not wrong, but I can tell you from experience, the amount of people who don't realize it's something that sounds very obvious, truthfully, but a lot of people don't realize until they start walking towards you, and then you have to remind them, look away from me and walk back to the sound of my voice. And trust me, I have been there many times. It is easier to just make it habit to communicate it that way.
Gotcha. I will add that to my list. The only reason why I say that, it was during training and it kind of just stood out to me. That's kind of why I bring it up now, but I'll make sure to emphasize that because, like what you said, it's just easier to avoid it because once when it does come up, it'll be more awkward, I guess.
And so I don't mean to interrupt. The follow up is, if you, even if you've already indicated, looking away from us, the moment you say walk back to the sound of my voice, right? Just a heads up, they may perceive that, because at the end of the day, we can say things. How they perceive it's a whole different story. The moment you then indicate walk back to the sound of my voice, they're thinking walk back because the orientation of the stop, y'all are behind them, and if you don't say walk back to the sound of my voice, facing away from us at all times, then they might just start walking back straight towards you, looking straight at you, even if you've already said not to. Again, I promise you it's gonna happen if you don't tell them. And even if you do tell them, sometimes you're gonna run into scenarios